Morning, everyone. Everybody hear me okay? All right. So I'm going to give you my perspective on what's going on in the cryptocurrency markets and use that as a segue into what we're doing at Abra. And as an example for what I think is a consumer-facing app that will go global and ultimately take advantage of the power of cryptocurrencies in a way that you can't do without the crypto. All right, so hopefully you'll have some interesting fodder to have some dinner table conversations after this talk. So this you've probably seen before, total market cap. The trend is still, up and to the right. Obviously there's been a correction, but just keep in perspective that we're talking about a $200 billion asset class that was effectively worth about $1 billion 4 years ago. All right, so what's transpired over the last few years is still astounding. We got way ahead of ourselves about 7-8 months ago, and we're fixing that, or the market's fixing that. But what's transpired in terms of awareness and acceptance of this as a new asset class, or the beginnings of a new asset class, in my mind, is astounding. I've been working in this space for almost 30 years, and to see the idea of a decentralized cryptocurrency model take hold when we worked on the first public-private key crypto deployments 25 years ago, my Netscape days, is really astounding. These are the top cryptos. I think the earlier speaker showed something similar. But again, most of these didn't exist even 5 years ago. Bitcoin, Ether, obviously been around for a while, but some of them are still relatively new. All of these are worth over 1.5 billion, meaning you take the number of coins in circulation times the price as of Friday, and that gives you a market cap. And the cheapest one on the list from a market cap perspective is 1.5 billion. So a lot of focus on price, but what else is happening besides just price? There's so much going on in what I call decentralization right now. It's becoming more and more difficult to keep up. All right, there's the kind of market-facing aspect of these new decentralized token protocols. A lot of people are looking at what's happening in Asia. There's this fear or uncertainty that maybe these countries are starting to ban cryptos. It's simply not true. I spent a lot of time in these markets. They are restricting certain things, like in China, there are no ICOs happening. They're not allowing you to use your bank accounts, but it's not illegal to hold a cryptocurrency in China. As a matter of fact, the person-to-person trading markets on things like local Bitcoins actually exploded in usage after the Chinese government stopped the ICO markets from happening. And the market in South Korea and Japan. There's some days where Japan accounts, by our estimation, for over 25% of market-facing crypto trading. We've all been reading about the ETF concepts. I think there's something like 12 applications for ETFs pending. None of them have been approved yet. I believe one will be approved. I believe the first one to be approved will come from a company that's already got an existing ETF in some other asset class, and will give the SEC and others comfort that they'll be able to manage this appropriately. You all probably read about this company Bakkt, which was formed by Intercontinental Exchange, owned by the NYSE owners, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get into that space as well. We're seeing a huge number of companies hiring both enterprise as well as consumer. I tend to focus more on consumer, where I think most of the interesting applications of cryptocurrencies are going to lie, but there's massive amount of investment happening all over the place. Hopefully you've heard of this idea of the Lightning Network. One of the issues with Bitcoin that people talk about is whether or not it's going to scale. The Lightning Network is this idea that we can take and batch transactions offline, off blockchain, I should say, and then bring them back onto the blockchain to settle. And I'm oversimplifying, but it's live now, and there are thousands of nodes, and it's growing all the time. And in theory, this would allow Bitcoin to scale to Visa numbers over time, which is super interesting. And Visa numbers at very low cost. I know you heard about ERC 721. The idea behind ERC 721 and CryptoKitties being a very simple example is that you now have what we call non-fungible tokens. In theory, one Bitcoin is always equal to one other Bitcoin. Even that's not totally true, because you can actually trace using what's called UTXOs where the coins came from, but the values are always considered equal. with these non-fungible tokens or NFTs, with ERC 721 being the first standard, for the first time, you have a really simple way to create new tokens where within one system, two different tokens can be completely different from each other, which is why two crypto kitties can have different values. You've probably read about MLB, Major League Baseball, and other sports leagues now trying to create collectibles. They're all going to be using this Ether-based standard, to my knowledge. While we read a lot about ICOs last year, most of them did not fall under the kind of securities bucket. T0 just announced the completion of a $130 million security registered token sale, which I believe will lead the way to a lot more SEC approved and registered token sales in the future. And of course, there's the insanity of EOS with $4 billion raised. I have no idea what they're going to do with that money. I'm sure they don't either, but we'll see. All right. So crazy stuff happening. So before I go on, actually, I think that unfortunately, there's way too much focus on what's happening from a trading perspective and not enough on what's happening from a consumer adoption perspective. So at Abra, we spend like an inordinate amount of time thinking about consumer applications of crypto, where it's all going from a consumer-facing perspective, and how to create simple consumer applications that solve real problems. Unfortunately, most of what we know is when it comes to crypto is things like this, which is sophisticated, complex trading or exchange environments. And there's like 25 of this. I think Coinbase is actually number 12 in terms of volume. They're not even in the top 10 globally. So there's dozens of these exchanges all over the world, all very complex, all geared towards the trader. Here are some other tried to be simplified wallets and ways to exchange crypto. None of which the average consumer can use, in our opinion. We've tried, we've watched them. So we're still at this point where we don't have a application out there used by millions of people that the average consumer who doesn't know what the double spend problem is, doesn't know what a blockchain is, doesn't know what public-private keys are, can actually use. Right? So we spend, like I said, all of our time focused on this problem. Right? What about private keys? Right? Crypto was not meant to be stored on a central server. I would posit that storing your private keys online is probably the worst idea in the history of bad ideas. But 99% of crypto transactions happen in a hosted model. Right? And I know more than one person who has lost 6 figures worth of crypto through 2FA hacks or other hacks. They won't go public, but I've spoken to them, and it's happening, and it still happens. It still happens 10 years after this phenomenon started. It kills me. But part of the problem is most people have never heard of a private key, or if they have, they couldn't tell you what it is, and they certainly can't tell you how to take care of it. Right? So until we solve that problem, people are still putting the onus back on exchanges, unfortunately, to solve this problem for them. So I'm going to show you a real-world application that we've created and talk about some of the applications of this just beyond holding and buying and exchanging cryptocurrency. So I'll show you the application first from a consumer perspective, take a step back, show you what's happening behind the scenes in terms of how it uses crypto and why this is so important. So what if you wanted a single application that would work legally everywhere, that not only could hold cryptocurrencies, but could hold dollars? Now this is FinTech Week, so I'm guessing most of you understand the basics of the legal structure for financial technology. If you're holding money on behalf of a consumer in the United States or Europe, usually you get a money transfer license in the US or an e-money license in Europe. In the US, that usually means 55 regulators you're dealing with, and in Europe, 4 or 5. And it's untenable for most startups now that haven't raised tens of millions of dollars. So what if there was a way to be able to turn every phone into its own bank so that the consumer could hold their own dollars, as well as their own digital currencies, and share them across wallets? Now that doesn't actually make a lot of sense when you hear it for the first time, because when you're looking at PayPal or Venmo and you see a balance on the screen, that balance is just painted on the screen. The money's in a bank vault somewhere. What I'm saying is, what if the money was physically on the phone, right? Just like the paper money that you carry in your pocket. So Abra has figured out how to do this for the first time. We've created this idea of a digital dollar. It actually transcends dollars because it's more like a digital asset. You've heard this idea of a stable coin, which allows you to fix the value of a cryptocurrency in dollars. We've actually created a stable asset model, which allows us to fix the value of any asset, right, in crypto, particularly Bitcoin. right? So this first version of our app acts like a very simple wallet that allows you to store any kind of cryptocurrencies, and the screen is not cooperating here, so I'm going to hopefully fix it. There we go. And it holds any type of asset, crypto as well as fiat. It supports 75 currencies today. It's the only app of its kind on the planet. It's got users in about 100 countries now. So you can literally hold 25 fiat currencies, 50 cryptocurrencies in a single app, and exchange between them in real time just by pushing this button, exchange. Now what's cool about this is, beyond the fact that you can hold 75 currencies, is that whether you're holding fiat or crypto, you're always holding the money on your phone as a single Bitcoin HD wallet. Even cooler is you don't have to understand what I just said in order to use Abra. And most of our users have no idea that when they're holding fiat, they're actually holding Bitcoin whose value is pegged to the dollar or the euro or the Canadian dollar or the Mexican peso, whatever currency they're holding. And they can flip back and forth between them. Yesterday when Ether tanked, we had a bunch of users depositing money in our system, crypto in our system, and converting it to our synthetic dollar and going back and forth. And today a bunch converted back. So far today a bunch have converted back. So they get this very simple kind of KYC-less model where they can move crypto back and forth in the system. They can add money using a bank account. I'll show you how that works in a few minutes. So now let's say if I want to add another wallet to this, you see in the upper right the wallet icon. I can press that icon and I can add from this list of currencies. Again, cryptocurrencies, fiat currencies. In the future, I'll talk about this at the end, we're going to be adding other asset classes beyond fiat and crypto, again using this stable asset class model of smart contracts tied to Bitcoin. All right. So now I'm going to press the add money function. I can use my bank account, my credit card. If I use my Bitcoin wallet or soon my Ether wallet to add money, I actually don't even have to know who you are because you're not actually touching Abra or the banking system. You're simply pushing the money to your own private wallet. Once you use your bank account, then for the first time the app will ask you who you are because that information gets passed off to our exchange partners. And I'll show you in the flow in a minute how that all works in the background. Right, so I believe this is by far the easiest to use application in the world, and it has already become the #2 downloaded cryptocurrency wallet within a few months of existence, right? And the others had a years of head start on us on this. Okay, so here's an exchange example. I press the exchange button. I'm going to convert some Ether, in this case, to US dollars, right? And the exchange is done. Here are examples of some of the tokens that are supported inside the app. These are the crypto tokens. In addition to the 25 fiat tokens, we're adding more constantly. We run a very complex liquidity management system, which takes advantage of our smart contract platform to determine which coins we can add. So this is the nuts and bolts of what's happening behind the scenes at Abra. When you're holding a dollar or Monero or Canadian dollar or Ripple, you're actually holding a Bitcoin-based smart contract that gives you effectively investment exposure to that asset class. It's like having a bar of gold and shorting the gold so that the two combined are equal to the market cap, or sorry, the mark to market of the gold the moment you bought it. Right? So Abra is doing that using these crypto smart contracts in real time, with Abra acting as the counterparty to the contracts. And I'll show you in a moment how we hedge away our counterparty risk in doing that. Okay? So you see the reference to the third-party Oracle, right? This blows that Oracle service up. Abra has built, for the first time, a consumer-facing, transparent Oracle system that takes price data from all over the world and figures out how to price these contracts so that a dollar stays a dollar or Monero stays Monero in the system. And again, the consumer doesn't have to understand any of this, right? Just like you don't understand what happens with an acquiring bank when you swipe a credit card, but it's very complex what's happening behind the scenes. And again, the reason this is so powerful is that I can now deploy a mobile app in 100 countries that holds dollars on a phone with no e-money licenses, no money transfer licenses, and no bank licenses, because I'm not actually holding the funds. And I'm not in the middle of the funds flow, right? The consumer is holding a private key on their phone. that gives them very simple investment exposure to whatever asset they're holding, in this case, dollars or potentially other cryptocurrencies. All right. So this is a very powerful use of Bitcoin and its multi-signature contract capabilities that I would claim is enabling an app that couldn't be done any other way, and I've tried. I tried for 15 years to find another way to deploy mobile banking services all over the world. I started a foundation in Haiti to provide banking services, and I got frustrated and I ultimately gave up because every country required all new compliance infrastructure. The whole point of this was to work around that for the first time, and this technology solved the problem for me. Right? So anybody who says it's all about price doesn't understand how programmable money works and the problems that it can really solve. So let me go back to adding money to the wallet, and I've got a couple of minutes, so I'll do this quickly. I'll post the slides online because there's a lot going on here. If I want to add money to the wallet, let's say I'm going to put $100 into my app. Right now, remember, once the $100 goes from my bank account into the app, it's not fiat anymore. It's hedged Bitcoin whose value is pegged to the $100. How does that work? Right, using that model I just described. So Alice buys $100 into her Abra app by transferring that money. Now, when she presses the transfer button, it looks just like an ACH. So if you ever use Venmo, right, and you ACH the money into the app, it's a very simple experience. The consumer experience looked just like that. But what's happening behind the scenes is totally different. The money was actually ACH to our exchange partner, depending on the country she was in. That caused the crypto purchase to happen. The crypto was pushed to the private key on her phone, which then instantiated a multi-sig smart contract that pegged the value of the Bitcoin to the dollar. Now again, it would be a hell of a lot easier just to store $100 in a bank. We're doing this so that she can now have that $100 on her phone, regardless of what country she's in on planet Earth, because we're not holding the money. Right? So this begs the question, what happens if the price of Bitcoin versus the dollar goes up? And what happens if the price of Bitcoin versus the dollar goes down? Okay, so now she's going to withdraw money after Bitcoin price increases. Now, if she's holding Bitcoin, whose price is pegged to the dollar, in theory, she's holding too many Bitcoin. So how does the math all work out? So she started out with 1 Bitcoin on her app in this context, because we're going to say that Bitcoin went up to $200, right? So the price effectively doubled. So 0.5 of that Bitcoin goes back to the exchange because she's going to cash out $100. 0.5 goes to Abra because she was holding too many Bitcoin, right? So we started at the same time with $100 in the bank. We exchanged the $100 for 0.5 Bitcoin. However, we borrowed an initial Bitcoin. I'm going to go back one. See at the bottom it says Abra borrows 1 Bitcoin from a lender. We're actually borrowing at very low rates. I have to pay back 1 Bitcoin, right? But I sold that Bitcoin for $100. But when the price went up, I didn't have enough money to pay back the lender. But remember, Alice was now holding too many Bitcoin. Turns out, when the price went up, Alice was holding just enough Bitcoin to do her withdrawal, give me the extra Bitcoin I needed to make my lender whole when I converted my loan back to Bitcoin. Okay? Now what happens when the price decreases? So let's say the price went down by half. Well, if Alice started out with 1 Bitcoin, she knows that she's no longer holding enough Bitcoin, right? Because the price went down. But I converted my Bitcoin, remember, that I borrowed, to dollars. So I'm now holding too many Bitcoin to pay back the lender. Turns out I'm holding just enough Bitcoin, right, after I convert it back to make Alice whole and pay back the lender. So the money works. The money movement works correctly in both directions. Our system is now automated to do this in real time for all 75 currencies in our system. We've now done this for hundreds of millions of dollars in transaction volume without losing a penny, including when the markets tanked in Q1. Right? So it's the only consumer-facing smart contract system running on the planet that has actually processed real consumer transactions, and most of our users don't even know what's happening. Anyway, so that's it. I'll post this online. I guess we're out of time. I don't know if we have time for questions, but
take a few questions. But yeah, real quick. So if I wanted to get Abra, where would I go?
Oh yeah, just go to the App Store and search for Abra. You'll find it right away. It's
very simple. The last time I heard him speak, I was downloading as he was talking. I'm like, I got to get this. So yeah, let's take a few questions, and then we'll go on to our next speaker.
What if your phone gets stolen?
Yeah, so you're holding the private key on your phone. The first time you receive money, either by depositing crypto or money from your bank account, a modal dialog takes over your phone which says you have to back up your key right now in order to continue, gives you a backup phrase to write down, validates that you've wrote it down because you have to type it back in, and then you're good to go. So we have hundreds of thousands of users. We have yet to have somebody complain that they lost money because they didn't write down the key, because we forced them to do it. Yeah.
Sir in the middle.
Great talk. Obviously, you're talking about you're the first app really penetrating consumers, but customer service has been non-existent with big changes. What model do you think is the appropriate model? What are you guys doing? What do you think consumers need in terms of the way things are? You send an email, you get back.
Right. Right. I tweeted about this yesterday because Abra is now the number 2 app, according to Apple, in the crypto space in terms of downloads. And we have a 90% CSAT rating via our customer service team. I would venture a guess that that's probably 30 percentage points higher than the number 2 in terms of CSAT in the space. We invested massively in this. I mean, we get emails saying, hey, you guys are the only company that actually responds, whether I like the response or not. And I don't know why. I really don't. It doesn't make any sense. It's such an easy way to differentiate yourself. But we have customers in 100 countries, right? So we have poor farmers in the Philippines using this to buy crypto. We have rich bankers in New York using this to buy crypto. So either way, they don't know what a private key is. So we spend a lot of time hand-holding senior citizens, right? We did a pitch, an online seminar via AARP, and we had like hundreds of people on the line, right? All learning about this for the first time, and we were flooded with support emails afterwards, but they all got responded to. I don't know why people in this space don't appreciate that. I really don't. We do.
Excellent. Big round of applause for Bill.
All right. Awesome.